It's the top of the hour. I'm Anderson Cooper in Wilmington, North Carolina, along with Don Lemon, who's in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Chris Cuomo, who's in North Myrtle Beach. This is our special coverage of Hurricane Florence, and today it begins. After days of warnings and more than 1 million evacuated, the Carolina coast are now feeling the first bands, just the first inkling. What could be the worst storm to hit this area in almost 30 years. This is a huge, huge storm. Moments ago, a new set of data just released on how powerful the hurricane is, where it's headed. While its winds are slightly weaker, that's good news. The area it's predicted to pummel has now gotten bigger. It's actually doubled in size from initial forecasts. It's gotten twice as large. Here's a taste of what's headed to the coast. Listen to what winds sound like at just 55 miles an hour. The winds are just one of the storm's triple threats. This area could see a catastrophic storm surge reaching as high as 13 feet. The downpour is expected to be relentless, with one projection estimating 10 trillion gallons of rain will fall before Florence is finished. Just here in Wilmington, they're talking about getting 8 months worth of rain over the next 3 days, and they've already had a lot of rain this year. We're covering Hurricane Florence up and down the coast and inland, as only CNN can, with crews all over these states. But first, let's go to the CNN Weather Center. Our meteorologist, Jennifer Gray. So the National Weather Service, Jennifer, just issued its 2 p.m. Eastern update. What have we learned?
The storm is maintaining its intensity. It still has winds over 100 miles per hour, 105, gusts of 125, moving to the northwest at 10. It is expected to slow down, as we've been talking about. And like you mentioned, this storm is very, very big. The winds aren't going to matter as much, knowing if they're 105 or 120, because it's the duration of the storm that makes this one so unique, because structures could withstand 100-mile-per-hour winds if the storm comes and goes. But the fact it's going to sit here for 24 to 36 hours, a lot of structures aren't going to be able to take a beating like that for so long. And that's the scary part about this storm. Is expected to make landfall as a Category 2, 100-mile-per-hour winds tomorrow morning, and then sit along the North Carolina coast Friday afternoon into Saturday afternoon, possibly pushing into South Carolina. So the storm surge, the flooding, is what is the hugest concern with this storm. Only 8% of people die from wind in tropical systems and hurricanes. More than 75% of the people die from the storm surge and the water. And that hasn't changed regardless of the category. The storm is so big and it has so much momentum, and all of that is heading towards the coast. Those outer bands already reaching the coast, and so it's all downhill from here. This has begun. We are starting to see the first impacts, and the storm, the center of the storm, is still about 100 miles from Wilmington. Current wind gusts about 53 miles per hour in Beaufort, and the rain is going to be relentless. 20 to 30 inches of rain expected over the next several days as this storm parks itself. But let me remind you that storm surge is going to be one of the biggest threats with this, because it is going to last through several high tide cycles. The tide is going to come up, and Anderson, the tide won't be able to come back down because the water is continuing to push. And so the storm surge is going to pile on itself over the next 24 to 36 hours. And I was looking at one of the river gauges near where you are, near Wilmington, and it's forecasted to reach a record, as we were talking about earlier, at 24 feet, higher than Floyd. And at that level, many of the roads are going to be impassable. Several of the roads will be under 7 feet of water, and many of the homes in that area will be inundated. And that's one of the biggest fears with this storm.
Yeah, I mean, it's unimaginable to think in Wilmington, 8 months worth of rain in just 3 days. I was just talking to the mayor about the effects that's going to have in a lot of different areas. He was talking about, 20, 30, 40 inches of water in some places. I mean, again, it's hard to imagine. Jennifer will continue to check in with you. And Chris, that's one of the big concerns that the mayor here in Wilmington had, and I assume folks there have as well, is people thinking once the storm passes that the worst is over. But with all that water on the ground, I mean, a lot of bad things happen when you got a lot of deep water and you have power lines down. There's no telling how long this water could stay on the ground in some areas.
That's an excellent point. It's something that they can't really predict, but they know they have to worry about. Look, you have 3 waves. You have, right now we're in the calm before the storm, right? Florence is going to come. She's going to make her impact felt. You're going to have storm surge that if you want to pan to the left here, it's going to take out the bottom of many of these homes here. They were all gone because of Hugo back in the 80s. Now they're built on stilts. This first level that you see, that's what they're expecting in storm surge. So that wave happens. Now what's the second wave? Duration of rain. As you said, 8 months worth in 3 days. What does that do? It floods everything. That water's being pushed by wind. Now, what's the third level? Water draining from surrounding areas in what's already been a fairly rainy period. And what does that tell you? That's not water anymore. It's toxic soup. It's sewage. It can't be used. It's not drinkable. You can't use it to wash. And they're stuck. So if you've made the decision to stay, you have a problem. And that takes us to the big concern here in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. If you can go to the wide shot that we've set up on our house to show what's going on, look at all the people down here, Anderson. They tell us, the local officials, that they believe they're 85% emptied out. And they're saying that these are just the last people. We have seen a lot of people here in a mandatory evacuation zone. And let's be very clear, this isn't a shame campaign. We care about one another in situations like this. There are so many kids, people staying behind because of their pets, or they're elderly, or they're worried about not being able to get back. So there are hundreds of people on this beach right now. There's a police pickup truck here. They're watching. We're watching riptides form in the water, and we're still in the calm before the storm. What happens when the window closes and they can't leave? That's the concern. What happens when for 30 hours of wind and water, this beach is gone? What they're calling a sand dune here is a joke. It's landscaping. It's grass that's going to stop maybe a foot or two of surge for a while. This could get bad quickly and stay that way. And that's why this is a mandatory evacuation zone. They haven't been able to get people to leave. Even mandatory doesn't mean that they can lawfully force you out of your home and community. So instead, they've had to put a curfew in place. So starting tonight at 7 p.m., it will be from 7 to 7. So at least they can keep people inside when these bands above our heads start getting thicker, more powerful, and bringing weather with them, bringing water and high degrees of wind with them. We're going to go to Ed Lavandera now. He's up in Morehead City, North Carolina. In South Carolina, one of the mottos of the state is, "While I breathe, I hope." And there is an irony to that, Ed, because people are making decisions to stay behind, and they are putting their lives at risk, and they're putting a lot of hope in this storm not being what they expect.
Hey, Chris, we are in Morehead City, where we're seeing the strongest bands on the northeast edge of this hurricane starting to come ashore here. This is Carteret County, who spoke with the emergency director here just a short while ago. And to get to the point you're talking about, he told us that he believes that most people have evacuated from here. We were here a couple of nights ago, and this is an elderly retirement community over here. There was a parking lot was full of buses about 48 hours ago, evacuating elderly folks. One of the concerns here in this particular county, Chris, is that the entire county, very low lying. So they're worried about the winds that we're seeing now, where gusts that we're told have already started reaching up to about 60 miles an hour. But they're concerned about the inland flooding. The winds are coming out of the north back out to sea. We're looking due south from where we are, the way North Carolina and the coastline curves. We're essentially looking due south out into the Atlantic Ocean. This is the sound between the mainland and the barrier island, which you can't even see anymore. It's just beyond that bank. And since we've been here, Chris, that boat that you see out there, that white boat, has already taken on a great amount of water. That has happened in just a short while, so that boat will be gone. Just beyond that, to the right of it, you see that green boat. There was a water rescue team out here. There had been reports that perhaps there might have been 2 people inside that boat. A water rescue team went out on a small boat, 2-man team went out, and they didn't find anybody there. But that boat has already been blown into that bank just over there on the other side. And this is just the beginning stages of this storm, so a great deal of concern. We have still seen a number of people walking around, driving around. That's one of those gusts that we're talking about, and that is the point here. As these winds sustain at these kinds of levels, eventually all the first responders will be pulled off the streets until those winds die back down again. But, you know, there is still the occasional person that you see driving around. We've seen a number of people walking down the waterfront here, but the conditions quickly deteriorating, and you get a sense of just what the concern here is going to be over the next 2 days. Chris?
All right, Ed, look, you know, the first caution, you and I have been through the worst of it together. Be safe, keep the team safe. We're still nowhere in terms of what the worst is that we'll deal with. I'm looking at the radar right now, and Ed is right. We're just starting to see the first bands of weather of this storm. Now, here in North Myrtle Beach, if you were to look at us on a map, it's about 10 miles of coastline between Wilmington and Charleston, South Carolina. And this is like the inside. It's like, you know, the deepest part of a funnel of beach coming in towards the coast. That means we'll get it later here, but as the radar shows, it's going to be bringing more energy with it, and that's concern. Now, we're going to start showing you another area of North Carolina right now that is already seeing flooding, okay? And again, this is because this place is vulnerable. It is spongy. It's had a lot of water already. Look at where we are here, all right? I'm not in this for some kind of fake water effect. I'm showing you this is normal tidal activity, all right? This was just from the high tide. Now we're at low tide. High tide will be back again about 11 o'clock tonight. Look how close I am to the homes. This is the normal tide surge that they have. And I'm only, what, maybe 80 yards from the houses. And there's zero storm surge. There is zero to be concerned about right now. And that's why everybody is predicting that it could be so much more devastating in areas. And that's why it was mandatory evacuation. So we're starting to see just the beginning. We will take you throughout the storm every step of the way, giving people in harm's way information as long as they have the ability to see us, telling you what the first responders are telling us.